Hello guys, welcome back. I'm Rachelle Bezuidenhout, English teacher from Rustenburg High. And here we have Laila Brits, Remofilwe Dube and Marley Kutsia joining me today. The lesson that we'll be discussing is a poem called To Learn How to Speak, which in my opinion is probably the most difficult poem that we will do this year, but it's also very interesting. So bear with me. I want to share my PowerPoint with you. Okay, there we go. Let's make a slideshow. Okay, I'm going to read the poem first so that you can hear what it sounds like, and then I'm going to ask you how you understand it. To learn how to speak. To learn how to speak with the voices of the land, to pass the speech in its rivers, to catch the inarticulate grunt, stammer, call, cry, babble, tongue snot, a sense of the stoneness of these stones from which all words are cut. To trace with the tongue wagon trails, saying the suffix of their aches in kuil, pan, fontein, in watery names that confirm the dryness of their ways. To visit the places of occlusion, or the lick in a flaybank dawn. To bury my mouth in the pit of your arm, in that planetarium, pectoral beginning to the nub of time, down there close to the water table, to feel the full moon as it drums at the back of my throat its cow-skinned vowel. To write a poem with words like, I'm telling you, stompy, stick fast, Golovin, shungololo, just boom bang, just to understand the least inflections, to voice without swallowing syllables born in tin shacks, or catch the 5:15 ¼ Johannesburg train, to reach the low chant of the mine gangs mineral glow of our people's unbreakable resolve, to learn how to speak with the voices of this land. Okay, now does anyone have any idea what the poem is about? Laila?
Ma'am, I think it's about someone that tries to learn to speak different languages, or just to learn how to speak in the poem. I don't know. I think it's someone just that just wants
Yes,
to learn how to speak.
yes. He says here, to learn how to speak with the voices of the land. Okay, so we know that he wants to learn to speak, to say something. Now, if you add I want in front of all the twos, they will make much more sense. Let's have a look. To learn how to speak. I want to learn how to speak with the voices of the land. I want to pass the speech in its rivers. I want to catch the inarticulate grunt, blah, blah, blah. I want to trace with the tongue wagon trails. So if you add I want, the poem makes much more sense. Okay. Now let's have a look at the type of poem. It's free verse. There's no set rhyme scheme. Rhyming is not a natural form of speech, and I think that is why the poet chose free verse. Is he wanted his poem to look like regular speaking, to feel like that as well. We'll get to that, how he links one idea with another as we discuss the poem. The setting is in South Africa. We will discuss the setting at length when we go through the poem. Symbolism, the progression of speech and transport symbolizes the progression of society and the traditions of the people. We'll get to progression as well. That's very important in this poem. It's part of the theme. Progression. Does anyone know what progression means? What does it mean to progress?
Ma'am, it means to move forward.
Yes, exactly. It means to move forward. Hey, it's the opposite of standing still. So the poet's efforts as an English white man and struggles to learn the languages of black and white people of South Africa. So the poet's name is Jeremy Cronin. It's a very English name. And he wants to understand Afrikaans people as well as all the different black nationalities in South Africa, or the different languages of the black people. So this is what the poem is about. The mood is awestruck or celebratory. He celebrates the differences, the people of South Africa. Now the summary, this poem focuses on progression, different kinds of progression, namely speech progression, how when you are a baby, you just make little sounds, and then when you become a toddler, you start saying certain words. And then one day, when you come to grade 1, you can fully speak, and then you learn to read and write. And then one day you are able to express your ideas in a language. Okay, so that is how speech progresses. First, it seems really strange to us. And then as we get used to the language, it starts sounding more natural. Dube? Dube, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Were you in an Afrikaans primary school?
I was in an English primary school, mixed English Afrikaans.
Okay, so when you came to our school, which is an Afrikaans school, did you find it very natural to speak Afrikaans? Did it come naturally to you, or did you have to practice?
Sorry, ma'am, the internet is a little bit slow.
That's fine. Did you immediately speak Afrikaans perfectly, or did you have to speak it a lot and hear it a lot in order for your Afrikaans to become so good?
I had to speak it a lot and hear it a lot. I had to surround myself with people who spoke it a lot, who could perfectly speak it, so that I can learn them.
And you had to understand the culture in order to fully understand the language, hey?
Yes, ma'am, indeed.
Yes, because otherwise a word like sokkie would be something that you put on your foot and not a dance that you go to and that kind of thing. Hey?
Yes.
So we have to understand the culture in order to understand the people. And that is also what this guy, Jeremy Cronin, is getting at. Then a river progression. Rivers, catch, babble, kuil, pun, fontein, watery names, occlusion, lick, flybank, mouth, water table. All these water images emphasize the importance of water in a dry country like South Africa. That water is very important to all of our cultures that we have here because we have such a dry country. And then we need the water to survive, just like we need connection, culture, speech to survive. Hey? Then the second last one is transport progression. First, the historical trek of the Boer pioneers, the groot trek, is referenced. Then the commute of the black workers to Johannesburg on the 5:15 train, and then the descent of the mine workers into the earth. Transport progresses. Also time period, stoniness of these stones, in other words, the Stone Age, then wagon trails, the time of the groot trek, planetarium, pictorial beginning to the nub of time. We'll have a chat about that line later. And then syllables born in tin shacks, train and mining. These are different time periods. The last part of the poem, we are in the modern time period. The structure, 33 lines, 1 stanza, divided into parts by 2. Okay, but you won't understand all of this until we have gone through the poem as a whole. Let's look at the first 2 lines. To learn how to speak. People, now this is not really the title of the poem. The poem is actually untitled, but we call it To Learn How to Speak after the first line. It's just like in Sonnet 18, Shakespeare's poem, we call it by the first line. Hey, shall I compare thee? Okay, so the title, the infinitive is used. Does anyone know what the infinitive is? A finite verb is a complete verb. Hey, the infinitive here is a verb that starts with to to learn how to speak. And it's not complete unless you add a subject to that. So it must actually be, I want to learn how to speak. It doesn't use full sentences. Okay. The whole poem reads like a train of thought. You will see how one thing reminds him of another thing. We will chat about that as we discuss the poem. To learn how to speak. Now people, this is the refrain. The refrain is the part of the poem that actually repeats itself. And we'll get to the last 2 lines of the poem that is the repetition of the refrain. The poet wants to learn the languages of South Africa, like Laila said, and understand its people. He wants to learn by listening to the voices. Okay, the voices in his head. What voices does he want to listen to? The voices of the people. Hey. With the voices of the land, personification. People, obviously the land can't speak. You don't, when you dig a hole to plant a tree and the ground says, no, don't dig in me. Obviously, the voices of the land refers to the people. The people have voices, the land doesn't really. Hey, so it's personification. To parse the speech in its rivers. Now, what does parse mean? It means to divide speech into its grammatical parts. Like if I say the sentence, I love you. I is a pronoun, love is a verb, and you is also a pronoun. Hey, or I is the subject, love is a verb, and you is the object. So we have divided this sentence into grammatical parts. Hey. And in order to do that, you have to already understand the language quite well. So this is what the poet wants to do first. He wants to parse the speech in its rivers, to understand the country itself. Okay, to listen to what the rivers have to say. As if the land itself speaks, the roar of the rivers. He wants to break down what he hears in the rivers, the natural sounds of the land, and try and understand the separate parts of its sentences. Now, are the rivers literally speaking?
No, ma'am, the rivers aren't literally speaking. He refers to the people speaking, and what he means by parse the rivers, he means like taking the sentences and dividing each word for word and understanding each word and trying to learn each word for it, what its meaning and what it means and how it must stand in a sentence.
Yes. Yes. And if he says he wants to parse the speech in its rivers, he means he wants to understand how the land has formed the people and how the people have formed the land. Hey, how they are almost inseparable, the water of the country and the people. Okay, to catch the inarticulate grunt. What does inarticulate mean? It means you are unable to express your ideas or feelings clearly. The opposite of inarticulate is eloquent. If you are very eloquent, you are well spoken. Hey, so inarticulate means you are unable to articulate your exact ideas or feelings. So he wants to catch that, even the inarticulate grunt of the people. Maybe he's referring to the Stone Age now, the Neanderthals who mostly spoke with grunts and hand signs. Maybe he's referring to the very beginnings of humankind. Or maybe he's just saying sometimes people grunt inarticulately even if they are able to speak perfectly. Hey, like when your mother asks your father to take out the trash, he goes, that's an inarticulate grunt. Hey, and he wants to catch that. He wants to understand all the sounds that the people make. Stammer. Stammer is huckle, when you can't get out the words. Call, cry, babble. What is a babble? It is like a baby speaks. Hey, like baby, words that you can't understand. And tongue's knot is when you try to get out a word and it's a very difficult word for you to say and strange to your mouth. So your speech organs have trouble forming it. When you speak a language regularly, you train your mouth like you train your muscles to run a marathon. You train your speech organs, your vocal cords and your tongue and your cheeks and your teeth and everything to say the words perfectly. Now, when you have to say a new word, a word that's completely strange, your tongue ties almost. It's just difficult to say. Do you see the speech progression there? Grunt, stammer, call, cry, babble, and then tongues knot when you start to say actual words. A sense of the stoneness of these stones. Now, when I typed the word stoneness, my computer picked it up as a spelling error because the word doesn't actually exist. It's like if I say the humanness of someone. Hey, okay, so a sense of the stoneness of these stones. What do you hear there? A sense of the stoneness of these stones. What sound is repeated?
The S sound, ma'am. It's alliteration with the S.
Sound. Yeah, alliteration of the S because it sounds almost like a stammer. Hey, it imitates someone stammering. When you are trying to say new words you haven't said before, they are like stones in your mouth. Okay. If you have to say the word trajectory, for example, it's quite a difficult word to say. So it might feel as though there are stones in your mouth when you say it, or a word from a different language that you haven't heard before. Time progression, the Stone Age, language was around even then, even sometimes only in grunts like the Neanderthals. Okay, from which all words are cut. What does he mean that words are cut from stone? Where were words almost part of stones? Can anyone think of an example or of a time when that is referring to? It might be a biblical image even. Okay, maybe this refers to the Tower of Babel, hey, where everyone was speaking the same language and then everyone started speaking different languages. So when you take a stone and you cut it, you form something else completely with it. Like when you take a piece of marble and you form a statue with it, you transform it into something completely different. Now, that is the way that language works as well. It starts off as the stone, and then when people use it as a tool, it becomes something different, and all languages sound different. Hey. To trace with the tongue wagon trails. Now, who used ox wagons to travel? Marley? Is she there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, I can hear you. Who used ox wagons to travel?
Die boere.
Yes, exactly, die boere. Everyone was living in the Cape and Natal provinces, and then they didn't like to be under English rule. So the boere, the Afrikaners, went on this great trek, the groot trek. Hey, they loaded their ox wagons and they started moving inwards towards the country. Now, this was very difficult and a very famous period in Afrikaner history, and it formed Afrikaner's identity because it was so difficult, and they died of malaria and they died of dehydration, of thirst. Okay, a lot of the time. So to trace with the tongue wagon trails, if you are going to do that, to look at the wagon trails formed by these early Afrikaners, you're going to understand a lot of Afrikaans culture that we still have today. Hey, you must understand people's history in order to understand their language. This is true because many of the words were formed then and we don't know why exactly unless we understand the history. Because it goes on, saying the suffix of their eggs in kuil pan fontein. What is a suffix? It's a morpheme added to the end of a word. For example, beautiful. Full is not spelled with two L's because it's not a full word, it's only a morpheme, a suffix. So they called these places after water masses like Bloemfontein, Brakpan, Danielskuil. Can you think of any other towns that were named for water bodies? Am I putting you on the spot, guys? Can't you think of any right now?
Ma'am, Rietfontein.
Rietfontein, yes, definitely. There are many places that are named after water masses, even rivers sometimes, hey? In watery names that confirm the dryness of their ways. Okay, so why were the places named after water? Because water was so scarce, yet so vital. Water is very important for survival. We can't survive without water. So when they arrived at a water mass, they named the place for this. Now, do you see the antithesis there? In watery names that confirm the dryness of their ways. Okay, watery, fluid, the names sound fluid, yet their ways, the ways that they travel, their roads, their journey was very dry. But it might have a double meaning, meaning the Afrikaners' ways, their customs and culture seem very formal and rigid to him. In some ways, Afrikaners can be very formal and rigid. We're a strong people, but not necessarily a very accommodating people, historically. Okay, to visit places of occlusion or the lick in a flaybank dawn. Does anyone know what occlusion means? I'm glad you don't, because if you do, it means you were probably in hospital, because if they put a drip on you, and the drip has a little air bubble in it, and the liquids can't get into your veins, it says occlusion, meaning there's a blockage, okay? Maybe in a river, a big stone would cause an occlusion, a blockage, as in a stream, but also the closing of the vocal cords during speech. So the places of occlusion means the places of blockage. He doesn't want any parts of the language or of the cultures or of the people to be inaccessible to him. He wants access to all of that, even the hidden parts. It can also maybe refer to the places where people were not allowed during the apartheid years, because he was born in 1949 and he was a very activist. Yeah, well, that's needless to say, but he was an activist against the apartheid government. Okay, so the places of occlusion might be the places that people besides Afrikaners were not allowed to access, people who were not white. Or the lick in a flaybank dawn. What is the lick? Are you going to stand in a flaybank and someone's going to lick you? No, he's referring to the salt lick of cattle. They put these big blocks of salt so that the cattle can go and lick it to get in their minerals. And it's an image that has to do with farming, with boere. And a flaybank is a compound word formed with both an Afrikaans word and an English word. So I think he feels that he has come to understand Afrikaners and Afrikaans culture and Afrikaans history maybe a little bit better. Okay, are you with me so far, people? Must I go back and explain anything else? Are you fine? Okay. To bury my mouth in the pit of your arm. Now that's quite a gross thing to do, hey? To put your mouth in someone's armpit. But again, the word bury refers to an aspect of the language that is hidden. And if you are mouth to armpit with someone, it's quite an intimate way to be. Hey, you wouldn't put your mouth in someone that you don't know's armpit. So he wants this intimacy with the language, with the people of South Africa. Okay, so it's just, I think that he thought of a salt lick. Okay. And then that reminded him of something salty, namely sweat, your armpit. And he wants to bury his mouth in it. He wants that intimacy in that planetarium. Now again, this train of thought, this one thing leading to another kind of thing. Because first he thought of a salt lick. Then that made him think of sweat and an armpit, and that maybe reminded him of a planetarium, which is a dome-shaped building, the same shape as an armpit. Hey. So it's a metaphor. He compares an armpit to a planetarium. Why would he do that? To a building where the stars are projected. Maybe he's thinking of the infinite possibilities. Hey, the infinite possibilities of learning a language with the infinite possibilities of the stars. People, when we do a poem, we have to do some guesswork. Hey, we can read up. I read a lot about this poem, but some things are still up for debate. We have to guess. Okay. Pictorial beginning to the nub of time. Dube, what are your pics?
Ma'am, they are my chest muscles.
Exactly, chest muscles. So, pictorial beginning, if you are lying on someone's chest with your mouth in their armpit, you are lying on their chest, hey? And that is where life starts, at your mother's chest. So I think the nub of time refers to a nipple, which is the same shape as a watch, hey? So that is where life begins. You at your mother's breast, getting in language with your breast milk. Hey, that is why your mother tongue is the most natural language that you will ever speak. A nub is a little piece of something. Okay. Yes, we discussed that. Down there, close to the water table. What does he mean, the water table? The water table is underground water. Okay, so it may refer to a breast and breast milk. And it can refer also to, first he was looking up to a planetarium, the stars, now he's looking down into the earth, the water table. So language encapsulates everything basically, from space to underground. Okay, now this part is part of the next line. To feel the full moon as it drums at the back of my throat, its cow-skinned fowl. So the full moon looks to him. He looks at the sky again. First he was down in the earth at the water table, this life-giving thing that's underground. And now he's looking up to the full moon. That's also light-giving and beautiful. And it reminds him of a cow-skinned drum, a traditional African drum. Hey, and it is almost as though these African languages that he wants to learn to speak, the vowels are like these drums at the back of his throat. Okay. To write a poem with words like, once again his language has progressed. First he just wanted to be able to babble in the language and his tongue got knotted. He got tongue-tied when he said the words. Now he wants to be able to write poetry in this language, which is probably the ultimate form of understanding, is to create art in a language. Hey, he wants to hear, catch the words, then understand them, then say them at the back of my throat. Now he wants to create art with them. Do you see the progression there? You have to understand a language fully in order to create poems in it. Do you agree, people? Because you have to understand all the figures of speech that you are using and all the words that you are using yourself before you can actually use them in poems. Okay, so words he wants to use in his poetry. I'm telling you. People, this is a colloquial phrase commonly used in South Africa. People say, no, I don't believe it. I'm telling you, it's the truth. Stompie, stick fast, Golovin, Shongololo, just boom bang. People, these are all very typical South African words that we all use in our everyday speech. What's a stompie? It's a cigarette butt. Okay, but it can also refer to the name of a boy who mysteriously went missing after being suspected of being a police informant during the apartheid years. Hey, stick fast comes from the Afrikaans word vassteek, to get stuck. A Golovin is a koekepan. It's a small tip trolley used in the mines. What's a shongololo? Do you know?
Ma'am, is a shongololo not a type of worm or something?
Exactly. It's that worm where if you touch it, it goes into like a little spiral shape. Hey, a millipede, a duisendpoot. Just boom bang, informal phrase showing something just happened. And just boom bang, there was this lockdown that just happened. To understand the least inflections. Okay, so this is another thing that he wants. He wants to understand why the people raise their voice at certain times and why they stress certain syllables and words and others not. It's also a progression of understanding. Hey. To voice without swallowing. So he wants to be able to understand, to say, to talk with these people without hesitation, to be part of them. Syllables born in tin shacks. Okay? So first he wanted to understand the Afrikaners, and now he wants to understand the black people during apartheid. Hey? Because these syllables were born in tin shacks, like in townships. Syllables, words can be broken into syllables, like for example, English. Syllables. The 5:15 ¼ Johannesburg train. People, that has to do with pronunciation. How 5:15 Johannesburg train is pronounced. The people have to catch that in order to get to their jobs from the townships to the suburbs or the mines or wherever. The low chant of the mine gangs, mineral glow of our people's unbreakable resolve. What is a chant? It is when you sing. Okay, so the miners are singing. They have this low chant while they are working. He doesn't just want to learn the language, but talk in the same voice as the people, perhaps about the issues of the day, which would be apartheid, hey? Because this poem was written in the 1980s. Mineral glow of our people's unbreakable resolve. What do we mine? We mine minerals. Hey. Okay, so minerals are retrieved in the mines and they glow, hey, like gold. So just like this gold would glow one day when it's polished that they found in the mines, the people are glowing from within with their unbreakable resolve. One day they will be free. They are very strong. To learn how to speak with the voices of this land. People, the refrain again, and now he's not saying the land, he's saying this land. He's referring specifically to South Africa. He's present, invested, he's part of this country. Okay, do you understand the poem a little bit better now? Let me unshare. Is there anything that you don't understand that I should repeat with you? Obviously, it's difficult to understand a poem in less than 30 minutes. You have to go through all those notes again and work through them and make sure that you understand it. But okay, guys, thank you for a wonderful lesson and that you have been with me throughout this whole process. I will see you again when school starts.